forward today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
Here we go. Here we go.
What is up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on Arkansas Preps Weekly here on the Natural State Sports Network. My name's Kyle Sutherland, and I want to welcome you to the first official spring sports edition of the podcast. Of course, we've been doing some of our interviews with through the extra inning athletes, of course, through what they do with the commit crew. We've been doing those really for the past month or so, but now with the season right around the corner, we are going to get into both some baseball and softball. Of course, Jared Hawthorne will be joining us on the next episode to cover some softball, but we are going to bring in now Coach K-Bo, Kevin Bohannon. Of course, if you watched if you kept up during football season, he and I were on here every week doing all of those recaps. But now this is year 4 of I guess this is year 5 or 6 of you and I working together. But year 4 of high school baseball, at least, since we started in the 22 season. So looking forward to it, Kevin. It's crazy that we've gotten this far. I know it's weird for me because that 2022s. Well, I know there's in baseball you have freshmen as well, but it seems like in softball it's more prevalent to have more freshman contributors, and now those kids are now seniors. So, this is crazy that we've gone this far with our statewide coverage, but or this long, I guess. But now just looking forward to another year that's going to get started with benefit games next week, and then we start the real season the first week of March.
Absolutely. I remember when this 26 class came in and they were just babies, just freshmen, and you got to see some of them. And now you got, a lot of these guys are signed with, their college of their choice. And, with the way rosters have, been limited, kids are making very smart decisions, and they're making smart decisions early. Williams Svoboda, who we talked about during football season, as a receiver /Y/tight end for Pulaski Academy, just recently committed to UCA. That's a good spot for him, somewhere where he can go and play early. Could he have gone somewhere else? Probably, but that fits him. And that, we talked about how much these other Division I schools outside the Arkansas Razorbacks would benefit from a 34-man roster, and we're starting to see it now.
No question about it. I knew that I was going to forget already, but the mutant Mike. But you know what's crazy? Since football season, I think that's happened like 3 times. I have been so good about it, but I had my finger, so we're going to go ahead and get it out of the way. But for those that are new or just might need a refresher, so the way that we do this, and I know we have new people come in every year because it just adds more every year, but also you've got kids that are, freshmen and sophomores that their parents or family members, whatever, didn't listen before or watch. So the way that we do this is we start in Class 6A, we work our way down all the way to 1A. And then, of course, once we get into the season, now this is going to be our only episode until after basketball. We'll pick back up in about mid-March, let basketball finish its season, have respect for that. And then, of course, at the end, we'll talk a little bit. We'll introduce our sponsors for this season, as well as talk a little bit more about how the show format goes. But for now, we will go ahead and jump right into Class 6A. And Kevin, the narrative, or not really narrative, I guess the facts have been over the past few years. The West has been, for the most part, supreme. You think about Harbor. Conway won the state championship in 2022. Harbor won the past 2. And if you're looking at just on paper, probably Fayetteville wins that state championship as far as the preseason on paper when you think about the fact that they've got 3 Razorback signees on their roster. Now, I know that Harbor, the 2-time defending state champion, also has Luke Cornelison on it and others as well that you could point at. But just starting with Fayetteville there, you've got Razorback signees Landon Schaefer, Mark Brissy, who, of course, moved in from was that Batesville? I think it was. Yeah. And Jason Delamar, which football fans will be very familiar with him, exceptional wide receiver over the past 3 years for the Purple Dogs. But that's kind of where it really starts. And then you've also, as I said, you've got 2-time defending champion, or at least, again, from the on-paper standpoint. But where it really starts as far as who has done the most in the past couple of years, Springdale Harbor certainly owns that title. You've also got Rogers, that is a 5-time West champion. So they fell to Harbor in the state championship 2-0 last year. So we'll start just kind of by talking about those three between Fayetteville, Harbor, and Rogers. Those were, again, three of the premier teams that we talked about last year. And once again, three more loaded rosters for those squads.
Absolutely. And, when I found out that Brissy was transferring to Fayetteville, it's like, it makes sense. He signed with the University of Arkansas, and, Mark's a young 2026 kid. Like, he really could be a 2027. So, watching him do that, he did the virtual school thing in the fall, but now he's up there, and that's, he's working out with the kids. And I've talked to their assistant coach, Alex Smith, a couple of times. And it's not just those three. They got Charlie Graves, who's going to go play at the next level. Their catcher, Holzhauer, just a stud back there. So they're solid up the middle. And you've heard me mention this on this podcast anywhere I've ever written. If you're solid up the middle, you're good. So when you got Brissy on the mound, Schaefer at short, Delmar in center, and Landon behind the plate, you're pretty loaded. So now they just have to get over the hump. Schaefer's done well the last couple of years as their ace pretty much. Delmar didn't throw as much last year, but now you got Brissy, who's a true top-of-the-line guy, sinker ball pitcher. That's his velo's really taking a jump. He's 92, 95. He even run up to a 6 or 7 during the offseason. So I think that, it's them chasing everybody else. Last time that Fayetteville had a chance to do this was really in 2020. Davenport was there at that time, and they had a loaded roster. A lot of good kids that came up through that 2020 group that stayed together and played together through showcase, U-Trip ball. So it's going to be interesting to see how that happens. And then Cornelison, pitched last year and was part of that no hitter, not a perfect game because they walked about 19 kids, but not really. Dustin Helmkamp, I'm just joking about that. The head coach for Harbor. Cornelison, I thought he was going to be a third baseman hitter, coming up, but now he's projected probably to be a pitcher at the next level. 91, 92, got really good stuff. So he's going to be trouble for people. And then, Bentonville is going to be in the mix. They're always good. Coach Abbott with what he's built that program on. I really like, and then Jake Taylor from Rogers, they're back again. I think they could have 6 6A West Conference championships in a row, but 2020, of course, shut everything down. So, but yeah, 5 straight. And, Matt Melson, talking to him last year before the finals, they're the most consistent team. There's nothing flashy about them. They're going to go out and just beat you with pitching and defense and have some guys that are really tough outs. So there's nothing that I've seen this year that says that's going to be any different. Now, can the Central catch up to them? And this year, possibly. Cabot has Cale Turner and Jacob Murray. Those 2 guys are going to be tough on the mound and can beat just about anybody. It's the second year for Bryant to have Garrett Bach. We know that Bach family lineage. You can't keep those guys down too long before they start competing for state championships and winning them. So, Red Sutherland, the OU signee, being back, and they've got a really good supporting cast. So, North Little Rock is interesting because of what Jackson Estes has done in the offseason.
New coach as well.
Yeah, Cody Dillon's been there.
But he got promoted, right?
Yeah, I think it's his 3rd year, and it was after Cope left to go to Rising. So yeah, 2nd year. Estes was a mid-80s arm last year, and his bullpens leading up to the preseason were 91, 92, 93, and just disgusting stuff from a lefty. And a good build, 6'3", 215. Now, if you stack behind that, you got a shot. Now, where's the offense going to come from? That's going to be tough. So they're going to have to figure some things out. Caleb Short's back for Catholic. They lost some good guys. They lost Bowman Stein to the transfer portal. He went to Robinson. I know there's not a transfer portal, but kids do transfer. So the Central, they have a shot, but we'll see.
Bentonville, I wanted to ask you about them real quick because I remember it was like last week or last year, 1 week we're like, what's going on with them? Then we're like, oh man, they're really, because they started off like they really slow. They won 5 or 6 straight. Then really between about mid-March to mid-April was a pretty miserable month for them. Then they won 9 of their last 10. Of course, that last one was the one they lost 4-3 to Catholic in the first round. So would Bentonville probably be a good? I mean, I know last year was last year, this year is this year, but would they probably be a perfect example of a sleeper maybe out of that West?
Possibly, and we didn't even talk about Rogers Heritage, which I didn't overlook, but because they've got guys that are back again this year after what Brian Walker's done the previous 2 years, getting those guys, in this their expectations now are not just to get to the state tournament, it's to get to a state championship. And the run that they were on last year, the last 2 years, their starts have been ridiculous at like 17-1, 18-2. They've been down to the Gulf Coast to compete the last 2 years. So Rogers Heritage will have a lot to say about what happens in the West as well. But yeah, Bentonville, they're ones that can kind of be lurking in the weeds, so to speak, but they've always got good talent and they've always seemed to put together at the right time. 2 years ago was when we pretty much had kind of count them out, and next thing you know, they're in the state championship game. So they've made it 2 years in a row, and then this past year they didn't make it. So, hey, why not make it 3 out of 4?
You talked about the Central, Cabot, and Bryant. Both of those teams returned some talent, and they made the semifinal round last year. And then 2023 5A state champion, Little Rock Christian, is moving up into Class 6A. So that's really interesting there. Now, the Warriors made the quarterfinals last year. I believe it was Van Buren they lost to, if I remember correctly. So how do you see that playing out there with them moving up to the state's largest classification after doing really well in 5A?
Yeah, they lose Jackson Kircher. They lose Little Bowman at short, who's I think he went to OBU. I think Kircher's at Oklahoma right now. So they're going to compete. Coach, goodness gracious, Brandon Eller. Yes.
Eller.
Sorry about that. Yeah, Coach Eller was really excited about the chance to play, at the highest level in the state. They feel like they can compete. I think they're a playoff team. Now, they've got a good young crop coming through. When I talked to him about his 8th and 9th grade group, we're going to be really good. And they got some guys that can compete on the mound that were sophomores last year. They're a year older. So they'll compete, and I think they'll do really well.
Then on down to Class 5A last year, even though that they weren't the defending state champions, this was pretty much just every single week. Who is going to take down Valley View, because they got walked off in both the 2023 4A game as well as the 5A game against Little Rock Christian that we were talking about in 23. They don't have the star-studded cast that they did last year, but they're still pretty dang good. And the Blazers are always competitive. Of course, on paper, they don't have maybe the star-studded cast, but Maumelle, the team that they beat in the state final last year, of course, that was on a Sunday. Were you supposed to? Did you call that one? I can't remember. I know
we 3-manned it.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, because that was now. And a couple of years ago, luckily for that one, it actually didn't get canceled or didn't get postponed as the game had started, like the 2022 5A game did for softball when we got like 5 1/3 in and had to come back the next day. But really hot Sunday, I do remember that. And the Blazers just took care of business. But Maumelle, they've got Hog Siney, Peyton Lee back. They've got Blaze Ward, who is going to Mizzou. So, both of those teams, both of the finalists, you'd expect them to be right back in the mix again. But we'll start with them. Just kind of talk about what you see coming back with the returning state finalists.
Yeah, Grayson Johnson's another good one for Maumelle behind the plate. But Peyton Lee's, I think he's the top pitcher in the class this year. He could be up there as the number 1 player in the state. I think he's number 2 behind Schaefer right now, but he could push for some draft consideration come July. He's been 94, 95. He went to the PBR Super 60 a couple weeks ago. Average fastball was 94.7 or something like that, and he got up to 95. The slider is elite. The off speed is just next level. So you're not going to beat him. You got to hope he beats himself. That's the thing this year. Maumelle, in the past, the scouting report was, how are they going to get runs? And, they didn't score, but they had a chance to in the championship game. They had the bases loaded last year. and against Valley View, and they just couldn't get anything across the plate. So how are they going to score runs? And they did in the state tournament last year. They scoring 7 runs a game and hitting home runs. Alan Timmons hit a home run. Little shortstop that's at South Ark right now, who he did hit his first collegiate home run this past weekend. So shout out to my boy Alan Timmons. But yeah, Maumelle should be right there. The problem with Maumelle is they're a tough conference. They get Benton. BB's going to be good. Chance Cleveland does a great job up there. They were sneaky last year. And you got Sylvan Hills. Sylvan Hills has the Harrison kid who 6'2", 215, 220, low 90s. And then they got Everett Bird, who Little Rock was on. He's going to go to McLennan, low 90s guy. Jaden Sloan, center field. Sylvan Hills is going to be good. Sylvan Hills top 5 team. Then you got Valley View. Valley View doesn't have the arms that they had, the depth that they have last year. They don't have Slade Caldwell. They do have Drew Gartman. They do have Owen Roach. They do have Keaton Mathis. Keaton Mathis is going to be their ace on the mound right now. Levi Martin moved in from Pocahontas. That's a good get. He's good on the mound. So, yeah, they're going to be deep. They're going to win the East. They're going to be competing for a state championship. Let's be number 5 in a row that they have a chance to get to. So, the one over in the western part of the state to look out for is Russellville, of course. When you got Tristan Newberry, who is whatever outlet we were writing for last year. He was a newcomer of the year. I really like 6'4", lefty, committed to the Arkansas Razorbacks last year. Now he's up 92, 93. They've got Russ Martin, who's going to go to Little Rock and be a Trojan. Cade Palmer is committed to the Trojans. So, yeah, Russellville is going to be really good. I think they could push for a state championship. Benton is another one. They got a lot of talent back with Payne and Marcus Bates, who's committed to Arkansas. Sawyer Wilson at shortstop, who will be Division I JUCO. He has potential to be one of the best in the state. So Lakeside, Sheridan, those are 2 other teams that are kind of sleepers right now. Got a lot of returning talent both on the mound and in the lineup. So 5A, as it's not Valley View or bust like it was last year. It's a little bit more wide open. Should be a little bit more parity.
You talked about the Central, because it's interesting because the Central in softball, somebody's going to get left out because you got the 4 teams. It's kind of like in 1A through 3A, or I guess 1A through 4A. There's always like a team in regional or even district. We see it in district too. Yeah. That's how 5A is going to be because there's only 4 spots and you've got 5 legit, at least on paper coming in the season, 5 legit teams. So the Central is going to be very competitive both in baseball and softball. But then you think last year, I think the conference in Lake Hamilton, of course, was the darling coming out, not just in the South, but really 5A. But that conference, you just really didn't know what it was going to look like. Then you take Benton out of it. You put Benton, and kind of repeating what you said, but take Benton and you put them in the Central. Do you think that, I mean, it might kind of sound like a duh question because, yes, Benton's a great team, and anytime you take a team and go to another conference, it's going to maybe hurt it a little bit. But do you see, again, quite a bit of parity, I guess is what I'm getting at, maybe between those top 3 teams that you mentioned, between Lake Hamilton, Lakeside, and Sheridan? Yeah,
you do. And you lose an Easton Hurley, who comeback player of the year, did so many things. They
came off an ACL injury from like October.
Yeah, I think it was October 14th or 15th. And then 6 months later, he's, throwing no-hitters and striking out 10. So losing somebody like that off a semifinal run, talking to Coach Matt Wiegand, they had a lot of contributions from lower classmen. So they're going to be okay. And Wiegand's always been one of those guys, when he was at Malvern, he had a good program. He learned under Mike Moore and Alan Gum at Sheridan. So he's going to run a good program, and they're going to be okay. Van Buren's another one out of the West with Weston Wilcox. That dude's a beast on the mound. He's big old boy, 6'2", 6'3", 215. These kids are getting bigger, man, I'm telling you. So I like what they're doing over there at Van Buren. They kind of went down a little bit only to come up. Van Buren's going to be there at the end of the year again.
Van Buren was one that I wanted to bring up too, but also in the East, GCT. Got a lot of young talent coming. I know that we talked a good bit about them last year. Yeah, Marion too. I mean, it's kind of this. I know, especially in NEA, a lot of the ones that Jared and I talk about are typically the ones on the baseball side you and I talk about. But GCT, Marion, of course, Marion went to the state final, or actually won the state
They won
final in
it, yeah.
2022. Yeah, they beat man. That was that first inning was like over an hour long. It was insane. But so the Patriots and what do you see between them and GCT?
Yeah, Marion's got a lot of good returning talent. Greene County Tech between next year and 2028 is when they're going to have their best chance to win a state championship. So Cannon Ring was really good as a youngster last year, and he did really good behind the plate. But they've got a freshman, his name Brooks Robinson, baseball name all day long. And then they got just a really good 28 class coming in. Now, all those kids won't compete for varsity time this year. Good buddy of mine, Andy Running, has coached those guys for the last 6-7 years. So they'll compete. Right now I think it shakes out Valley View, Marion, and then GCT is 3. Searcy, maybe. Nettleton's back. Maddox Hampton's back to probably get that 4 spot.
What about Farmington? They moved up to the 5A West. I'm really curious about them because I'm curious on both softball and baseball. But they move up. They went to the semifinal round last year. Of course, lost to Prairie Grove. Now I think, if I'm not mistaken, Farmington were they were the 4 out of their region?
Probably because that
region was stupid crazy. Yeah, it was stupid crazy brutal. So they get to the semifinal round. And then this year, move up to the 5A West. We talked about Van Buren, in that mix. We talked about Russellville. Where do you think Farmington fits in coming off a strong season in 4A?
Man, anywhere from like 3 to 5, because we saw it last year. Like Mountain Home would like jump in and sweep Greenwood, and that next thing you know, Greenwood's kind of outside looking in. Greenwood's going to be tough again. Grant Carnes is back. He's not going to be as good on the mound as he was last year because of the labrum issues. He's got 2 torn labrums now, and he's going to go play football at the University of Arkansas as a preferred walk-on. So talked to Brandon, head coach, a couple weeks ago, and he says he's still going to play outfield, still hitting the middle, top of the lineup. So Farmington, Jay Harper does a great job, man. They've always been there at the end of the year. Their motto, I think their Twitter handle is "Win the Inning." It's always one that pops up in front of my mind right there. So, they'll be competitive. They got a really good class coming in right now, especially younger guys that are up there. Elsick, he played really well last year. I think he'll be back for another year. So, Farmington, they'll compete for a state playoff spot, and the Wild Wild West could be even wackier this year.
Yeah, you never know with those teams. And moving down to 4A, so some notable moves. We've talked about at least one team in each class so far that has switched classifications. But so 3A, defending 3A champion Gosnell is now in the 4A3 region. And then previous 3A dynasty, Harding Academy, is also now in 4A. So we'll start there. How do you see the Pirates and Wildcats adjusting to this class? I mean, I feel like it'll be pretty well, but then again, anytime you move up, it's tough.
It was funny because I've talked to a lot of coaches, and I'm writing out notes and sending them over to you. And next thing you know, I got like 16 teams listed in Class 4A because it just kept going on and on and on. You look at the 4A5 North, so they split the 4A5 into 2 different conferences now. So in one, you have Harding Academy, Pulaski Academy, Morrilton, Robinson, and then I don't know who. It doesn't matter because those are the top 4 teams right there. And then you got Malvern, Bauxite, Eastham, and Mills in the 4A5 South. And I'm just sitting here going, wow, how do you put the top 4 teams in one side of the region? Because those two conferences will play each other in the region. 4A5 North will have 4 teams in the state tournament this year. I have no doubt about that. No offense to Bauxite, Malvern, or any of those guys. But Eastham or Mills is going to make a regional. That's not fair. I'm sorry. I can say that right now. That's not fair at all when you got some teams that won't even make it out of their district tournament but could beat the brakes off those 2 teams. So you got Brooklyn in the Northeast. It's going to play Gosnell. Chad's back at catcher for the Pirates. He had a really good year. Going to 3 Rivers, I believe. I know he was committed to Eastern Oklahoma, but he's going to go to 3 Rivers now, I believe. So, Aaron Coots, they've got some pieces to replace, but they're always going to be tough, and they're always going to play a tough schedule up there. I'd like Gosnell to get out of there and get to a regional this year. So then you got to go to South Arkansas. So CrossFit, coming off an 8-4A conference championship last year, they've got a lot of good returners. They got 3 or 4 guys that have started for all 4 years, ever since they were freshmen. So you got good senior leadership right there. I think they'll have a shot to get to the state tournament again this year. They finished in the final 8 last year. Nashville and Arkadelphia are always going to be tough. Camden Fairview's got a lot of good young guys coming up. And we ain't even talked about the 1-4A yet. Shiloh Christian starts the Allen Gum era. Then you got defending champion Prairie Grove. And then you got Robinson, who made the finals last year. So it is so wide open. It should be so much fun in Class 4A this year. They're going to beat up on each other. Then you got Mike Lee starting his second year at Morrilton. I mean, just so much fun things to go through in Class 4A this year. It'll be I could talk about them for 30 minutes every week when we get into the season. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's what I had next, just was to talk about, because I mean, every single week it was like we were starving for something else to talk about. Not that we didn't have other stuff, but the 4A1, it was almost like we had something, a game or a situation to talk about every single. Yeah, I mean, Grab It was even in that mix, and now we talked about Farmington in 5A. Allen Gum, who was very successful at the collegiate level, is taking over at Shiloh. They're going to get a softball program next year, and he's now taking over at the baseball program. Now, he got hired last year, and of course, Jamie Beers did a good job with the baseball team as interim. Yeah. And then Prairie Grove had that incredible run last year and ended up beating Robinson in the finals. So, I mean, I know that, there's no telling what they can do. So, yeah, I mean, really just chaos is probably what we should expect.
Yeah, Miss Cameron, that was their first state championship, in 12, 13 years. And yeah, they'll be back. I have no, qualms about saying that they could come out of that conference. But Gravit's been really good the last couple of years. They made a run 2 years ago, got to the semifinals. So, how they match up in a regional, and then they'll match up with the River Valley again, which you have Clarksville, which who knows. But Dardanelle could walk out of that 4A, the River Valley region. The good thing with that conference is they got Morrilton out of it, which Morrilton moves in with Robinson, Harding Academy, and Pulaski Academy now. So that's just murderer's row, man. Thinking about it, I was sitting with a coach last year, and the conferences were about to be announced. And I remember going back and forth with a few of them, and we're like, this is really how it's about to happen. And for at least 2 years, you've got all these powerhouse schools, traditionally powerhouse schools. You got a Harding Academy that's won a lot of state championships under Shane Fullerton. They're going to have so much talent back after, a subpar year last year, not making it, very far, getting bounced out of the second round of the state tournament. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun in Class 4A this year.
And wanted to talk a little bit more about Robinson too, because they're going to have that big spring break tournament, the Invitational. I think 75 teams are coming this year. I mean, it's always just an incredible tournament that Coach Delaney and co puts on. And I know last year we were talking about them all season. They were pretty much highly ranked. They were just about every single week. But I know that you had said a few different times that you felt like they were maybe a year away from really, really doing some damage. And so is this the, of course, they've got Eichler back. It's where's he going to? Or is he's not committed. He's not committed. Right, not committed yet because he's still just a junior. But I didn't know. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that if he was. But the Senators just loaded again. And last year, again, we were kind of talking about, well, if it doesn't happen for them in 2024, look out in 2025. And they were the state runner-up last year.
Yeah, and you could see what they did against Lone Oak last year. They beat them, put them out, and that was where they really took off, and you could really kind of see. So getting Bowman-Stein, who has Division I offers from Catholic, was really big. So they got Brady Blackwell back. He's a junior lefty, 6'2", 220. Nathan Johnston's back at third. I just think they're a lot deeper this year. They were missing that one guy last year, and that could have been a Bowman-Stein. So we'll see. But yeah, having Logan Eichler back, him and Blackwell at the top, it's going to be tough. And I really like their lineup this year. They're going to be a lot deeper. They're going to be able to do a lot more things, especially with Bowman-Stein. Either leading off, hitting 3-hole, doesn't matter. He's a tough out. So. Yeah, Robinson could be in it again, but they're gonna have, and they'll play a tough schedule. Coach Delaney always loads those guys up. They'll play Robinson, they'll play Brooklyn Valley, they'll play whoever, and they always play the toughest teams in their tournament that they have on spring break. That's always a fun one to go out to. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I think it's the 23rd through the 25th this year if you're in Central Arkansas, it'll be Benton, Little Rock Christian, Maumelle Charter. Get out and see some really good baseball. And they do a really good job of putting like teams together. So they'll have some teams from out of state, and it won't be, Valley View will play a top team they played Ray Peck last year, and they could be playing them again this year. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at the schedule in depth yet, but Valley View will play some of the top teams from out of state, and Robinson will play a team or two that's on their same level. So the 1A and 2A teams that take part in this tournament will be playing teams that are on their level. It won't be playing Valley View playing, Bearden, so to speak. It's a great tournament. So really looking forward to that too.
Two more I wanted to touch on before we head down to 3A. So, South, you talked about Brooklyn a second ago, a little bit further south, Southside Batesville. I know they live by Southside, but since we cover the whole state, Southside Batesville had one of their best seasons in recent, I think since like in 20 or 30 years last year. And then also Lone Oak, that was the favorite all year last year. I know they graduated some. If I'm not mistaken, they bring maybe one or two of those college prospects back. But what do you think of the Jackrabbits, of course, that were one of the state title contenders for a few years there, and one of the top names we talked about, as well as the Southside Southerners?
Yeah, Southside, historical year run last year, and they're going to be at the top of their conference this year. Get into a region, get to a state tournament. And who was the other one that you mentioned besides
Lone Oak? I was going to ask about that. I know that many people are probably going to want to know about them.
Yeah, Lone Oak lost a lot. Still, he's just playing for the Razorbacks this year, and everybody else went to college. Cole Spears is at Neosho.
Okay, so everybody did. Yeah, I didn't know if they had any 25s left or not.
Cutter Culvert, yeah, he's gone. But kid that went to UCA was the MVP 2 years ago. His younger brother's back at catcher. But they've got some good young talent that they'll have a shot to make a state run this year.
Then down in Class 3A, so it doesn't really matter the sport. It seems to always be a gauntlet. Talk about it in football, basketball, everything. And, of course, a lot of that is because of the amount of teams. But as we just talked about, Gosnell, they beat CAC in the final, and they are in 4A. Kevin, do you think there could be even more parity this year? It always seems like, you talked about a second ago when you were going through 4A, you just kept thinking of another team. I know that's how it is for me in 3A, and regardless of the sport. So do you think there could maybe even be more parity, and it's a little bit more wide open this year?
Absolutely, because you've got the teams that have moved out. Just look at what's moved on. Gosnell moved up. Harding Academy moved out. So, yeah, I think there's more parity this year. Boonville's got some guys back. Mansfield's going to be able to make another run. Then you got Greenland, who moves up from Class 2A to Class 3A. They had, a couple of good sophomores a couple of years ago, Vaughn being one of them, that were on the football team as well. So those athletes playing multiple sports, these lower classifications, they're all juniors and seniors now. And that's what's going to be a lot of fun in these lower classifications. So looking around the state, you got those two in the northwest part of the state. Elkins is going to be back. New coach. That's going to be kind of a different era, but they've, won 4 or 5 state or conference championships in a row. And then Bismarck, we know the run that they made in football. Some of those guys play baseball as well. Ashdown, they're back. They got Walt at shortstop is going to be a Razorback signee. So, they've got a lot to prove after a subpar year last year. Falk's going to be kind of a dangerous team to look after, and Genoa Central was the top of that conference going into regional play last year. So, yeah, it's you got Haskell Harmony Grove, Camden Harmony Grove, the HGOC, the Hornets. The last 2 years, we were like, man, they do really good in regular season and peter out postseason. Well, they made postseason run last year. So, I just think with all the parity of the top dogs moving on, you got a lot to look forward to this year. And somebody's going to step up and win, just like in football this year. We had Bismarck or Salem. And at the end of the year, you had one of those teams was going to win a state championship, and it ended up, being Salem. So it's that year for baseball in Class 3A.
Really looking forward to seeing what DeWitt puts on the field. As far not necessarily what they put on the field, what results come from what they put on the field, because they had that 7-0 start last year, and you talked about Bismarck there. Bismarck was the one that ended their season and kept them out of the state tournament, and that was only a 1-0 game and regional. So, what do you think of the Dragons? I know the Dragons are real excited about softball this year. What is it looking like in baseball?
Yeah, they were the ones that kept emailing me last year. Hey, when are you going to get ranked?
Yeah.
Ranked. Like, go take care of business and beat a team you're supposed to beat, and you'll get ranked. And they did. Then they kind of fell off towards the end of the season. So I think that they've got another good group this year. I think 4 or 5 returning starters this year. So they've got a shot, and I look forward to seeing them. The conference is going to be a little bit better for them, and I think they have a shot finish second in the conference, then make a run in regionals.
Then looking at the Northeastern, since the state champion also came out of NEA, Rivercrest, they were a semifinalist last year. Of course, Grant, I know
2
that.
years ago.
Yeah. And then Walnut Ridge, Salem in the mix. Melbourne still has Arkansas signing Grant Wren. It seems like, I mean, these kids that we've covered.
Yeah,
since
he's not going to throw though. So
okay, so he's not throwing. Gotcha. Okay, so but what is he playing other than pitcher?
He may DH. I don't know, but he's not going to be pitching. And that's
so we know he's not going to be on the mound. But so he is there nonetheless for playing for the Bearcats for his senior year. And there's a lot of motivation there because they didn't go to the state tournament either. They lost to Harrisburg in the first round of regional. So what do you think of Rivercrest, Walnut Ridge, Salem's, Melbourne's up in that area? Yeah,
Walnut Ridge, what the program that they put on the field the last few years, winning 20 plus games. Coach Belcher is always going to put a good product on the field. I think it's them and Rivercrest are going to be the best that come out of that region this year. Now that Gosnell's gone, so a couple of teams, Osceola and Manila are kind of teams that are lying in the weeds that could be sleeper teams, as we talk about. Melbourne, just because their conference is down now that everybody's kind of moved on or moved out. That's why I think they have a good shot because, when you have somebody like Grant Wren, who is a big-time signing for a small school, talent kind of takes it up a level around him. So that's why I think that they've got a shot up there. And then Salem's got a good athletic group coming through right now, as we saw during football season. They tend to have dual sports that are really successful. Every time you have one make a state playoff run, not saying they're going to be in the state championship, but they'll have a chance to win their conference for sure.
And down in Class 2A, this was the one that I think we were probably the most surprised by the result, and not necessarily because Woodlawn got beat in the state championship, because they had won 3 consecutive post-COVID since the 2020 season got shut down. Ouachita ended the run with a 2-1 victory, but coming into the postseason, Ouachita was maybe about 3-4 games over 500. Not a bad team by any means, but ended up being the 3 seed out of their region. They beat a hot Rector team. Rector was 4 out of its region, and then did some good things. But I just don't know that we called Ouachita. And again, I'm not trying to pound on Ouachita by any means. We just didn't maybe see that coming, or at least I certainly didn't. So. What do you make of kind of how the state? I know we talked about it on the last episode, the finale last year when we closed everything up. But what do you make of the way that Ouachita finished and took down Woodlawn, but many didn't expect?
Yeah, we knew that it was funny because we were talking to friends and a lot of baseball guys around the state. They were going to be like, okay, this would be David slaying Goliath. If there was going to be a run rule, it was going to be that game. But the way that when you talk to their coaches before the game, and we talked about the young man that passed for them a couple of years ago, and just how they got through, moved up from Class 1A, competed very well in that conference, in that 8-2A conference, and they just kept hanging around. And they got close one time against Woodlawn last year. And in a situation where you're on a neutral field, that anything can happen. And we've seen that now in the last couple of years, covering it for PBS, which I hope we still get to do at UCA. So it didn't surprise me that, they did what they did. They just came through at the right moments. Now, are they my pick to repeat? No, because, they haven't put together a Woodlawn type run. Will they be there and have a chance? Absolutely. Because of the culture that they've built, and culture is a word that gets thrown around quite a bit, but what they've built there and what they've done, they're going to have a chance. That they keep rolling those guys through there. It's just like the coach before passed it down. They were able to take it to the next level, and they were excited about being in 2A. They didn't mind to step up in competition because they had already played all those guys. They grew up around those guys. They play them every year in Little League or Babe Ruth growing up. So now getting to play them at the high school level, they're not going to have the most depth. Woodlawn's going to have that, and they just get a shot to take them down, and they did last year. So I think they'll have another shot this year. McCrory, look out for those guys. Them and Riverside are really interesting cases because their pitching is at elite for a 2A level. Will Rushing was one of the top pitchers in Class 2A last year. He had a couple of games with 15-plus strikeouts. Southside B Branch is another one. They've always had good pitching, but hitting, even when Easton Swafford was there, Gus Holland, those guys were about all the offense they had. So if those three teams can produce offensively like they can on the mound, they'll be in a conversation for a state championship this year. Carlisle, the only problem is they're in the same conference with McCrory and Palestine Wheatley. Palestine Wheatley. Y'all let me know what you want me to say this year. But those guys that made a conference or a state championship run 2 years ago, they're all juniors and seniors now. So they're older. They've got a chance. They're going to host a state tournament once again this year on their turf. They get a chance to make a run. So Episcopal's moved up to 3A. Coach Eddie Stevenson thinks they got a better shot in 3A than they do in 2A. So you take a team that has been pretty good the last 2 years and move them up a classification. So that just opens up the door for somebody else to come in. But Carlisle has Jonathan Picker Jr., who's going to UA Rich Mountain, and then you got Ty Tanksley, who we've talked about quite a bit. He was the quarterback for the Carlisle Bisons during football season. Tanksley was just up to 90 miles per hour. He set a personal record the other day in a bullpen. Is he going to pitch at that? No. He'll be 85 to 87. That's pretty good for a freshman, though. And I think he'll be very competitive. They got two good guys on the mound with both those two. And then Coach Stephen, too, said he's got a number 3 he would be a good 3 at any 2A school. So those are your tops right there. And then you haven't even talked about Bigelow. It'll be interesting to see, after all those guys come through. Both Alexanders are gone now, so they can't rely on either of those. But Coach Craig Newmeyer said that, look, we had some really good freshmen, sophomores that played last year, and, they'll be a year older. So I look forward for Bigelow in that same conference with Conway Christian.
I want to go back to that 2A6 conference real quick. As you said, you've got a team, a Palestine Wheatley team that is very seasoned. Then you've got great pitching at both. You got, Riverside's not in the same conference, but in Class 2A, McCrory in that conference. Well, then you look over at Carlisle. Carlisle had now I don't know what the story was on it, but they still had a season last year that is certainly not by their standards, around 500. But you got Pinker coming back, and then you've got Tanksley. You kind of just summarized it there. We were ultra impressed with him as a football player. We know what he can do in baseball as well. Could this be maybe the 2A6 conference? With also exception to possibly Riverside too. Will that be the best pitching in 2A probably?
Absolutely. I think so, because, you'll have guys on the mound that are 88 to 90. That's pretty good for 2A baseball.
That's insane. Yes.
I mean, Woodlawn's not running guys out there that are bumping 90, 91. They have in the past. So was Southside B Branch, back in the 2013 to 2015 era. But, when you got guys that you could run out there, and they're not playing double headers because it's too much. They're playing home and homes. So you can stagger your pitching in those 2A conferences to where you're going to get best on best every time you run out there. But, in that situation, if you're able to throw your number 3 or number 4 at, say, a Des Arc or, a lower end team in the 6-2A, you have a shot to throw your 1 and 2 at a McCrory and get a chance to sneak up and get a conference win. Just don't want to have like McCrory and Palestine Wheatley back to back, then have a rain out and then have to reschedule, like it always happens in Arkansas baseball,
especially in that area of the state. It's insane. You just never know out there in the marshlands, as I like to call them. But one more I've got before we head down to 1A. Parker's, almost said Palestine Wheatley. Parker's Chapel had a young core in South Arkansas last year. Pretty good season. What do you think of them?
Yeah, they were on my radar early last year and then dropped some games and just didn't really quite put it together. But, if you go back, 2018, they won the state championship. They beat Spring Hill that year. So they go through Murderers Row in their own conference, being in there with Woodlawn and Ouachita. So if they can compete for that 2 or 3 spot coming out of that conference, that gives them a shot in the regional every year, playing teams from that 7 conference. So, Dirks, Murfreesboro, a couple other teams to kind of keep your eye on that have had really good seasons the last 2 years that may sneak up, whether it be in a district or a regional. But I like Parker's Chapel to, possibly make a run to state tournament this year.
Last but not least in 1A, the $1 million question for both softball and baseball. Will the Taylor reign end? And I will say this, Kevin. So you've got baseball that's won 3 straight. You've got softball that's won a record in all classifications, 7 straight. I'm still going Taylor, I'll go ahead. Our preseason rankings will come out next week. I'll go ahead and tell you, Taylor's going to be my number 1 in our softball rig because they've demanded that for so long. But I do think that there is probably maybe 2 other teams, Scranton and Westside Greers Ferry, that could probably give the softball side some competition for that state championship this year. If it's going to happen in 1A baseball, who is it going to be that takes down the Tigers?
I think that's a tough question. And, Jesse Humphreys is back. Then, the little Fowler, Coach Brian Fowler's son, Cannon's back this year. They've got decent class coming back. Caleb Downs is back. Then you got Aiden Hosley. So they've got a lot of freshmen and sophomores that are going to be relied upon this year. So while they do take a step back and they don't have as deep of a lineup this year, they're still going to be towards the top. But when you look Mount Ida, they had a good run during football season. They're probably going to win their conference. St. Joe's has some talent back that made a run last year and then just ran into a buzzsaw in the semifinals. So Armorel is going to be talented. You got Viola and Westside up in, the 2. Norfolk has moved out of the 2 1A. So you don't have Norfolk, Viola, and Westside Greers Ferry all in the same conference this year. Norfolk moved to the 1. They should win that conference. I think they will. Scranton, I think County Line has made some noise the last couple of years, but Class 1A, it's still really kind of the same old teams. But maybe Westside Greers Ferry can maybe get over the hump this year. They got to the state finals last year. Now they just need to put it all together. They've got a couple of good bats at the top of the lineup that are back this year. They don't have their stud on the mound, but I think they got enough that they can do it this year.
I know you just mentioned Viola, that 1A2. Did we talk about Armorel? I know that they've got
Tigers,
okay.
Armorel, their conference, they should be able to take care of business. They'd lose a game last year that just didn't make any sense to me. So I think Armorel, they've got a shot that the Tigers got to get back to the state tournament again. Well.
I want to go back to real quick to the Norfolk. They've been known as the party crashers the last few years, and being in that tough conference and all, it was brutal both in softball and baseball. But I know that we don't want to say put pressure, say they're just going to run away. But on paper, does it feel like that they should be able to take care of business for the most part? You would think?
Yeah, they've been battle tested the last couple of years because in that 2-1A they play a double round robin, and then they go to district, and then they go to regional. So they were playing Westside and Viola 3, 4, maybe 5 times a year. So, now the Panthers, now they're the hunted, and that's where they want to be. And, when he came up with the Party Crashers moniker a couple of years ago, we were like, okay, yeah, they just surprised everybody. And now they're not going to surprise anybody. They're going to be hunted. And, they're expected to get back this year.
Well, that will do it for our preseason coverage here as we get into baseball and softball here in the next few weeks. Before we do sign off here, though, for a few minutes, I want to take – so we've had some step up and sponsors for the spring. So extremely excited to be partnered with all of the names that we were about to mention. We'll start off with Team Funded. They actually – so – for those that were around last year, Kevin and I came over to Natural State Sports due to some unforeseen circumstances out of our control. We came over here And then we went from Arkansas Prep Extra to Arkansas Preps Weekly. And then the Super 7 for the podcast, of course. And then for the Super 7 rankings, we needed a sponsorship for that. And Team Funded stepped up. Now, Team Funded is, for those that are not aware, they're essentially a team fundraising company. They are for coaches and by coaches, all three. The three that we know, of course, Kyle Slayton, they used to coach at Nashville. And then Jay Keith that has coached he's coached at a bunch of different places. I know he's been at Parkview, Lincoln, Siloam Springs, and then also Chasen Bowman, who is my direct softball connect there. He was at Pangburn and Stuttgart, I think a couple of other places. But they're the reps for Team Funded here around Arkansas. And we'll talk more about them throughout the season. But they have stepped up and sponsored our Player of the Week. That will be our for the entire regular season from March 3rd, whenever it all starts, March 3rd, March 4th, through the last week of April. So that will be about the only softball, other than maybe some social media posts. That'll be the extent of most of our coverage until basketball is over. But we'll talk more about that as well, of how you can send players in and all that good stuff. But we will be sending T-shirts to if it's somebody local, I will deliver it to you. But otherwise, we'll mail you a T-shirt. So you'll be getting one with a red shirt with this logo on it every single week. So thank you to Team Funded. Also, Athletic Field Services of Arkansas. Jeremy Rice there has stepped up and has been a massive help for us, both for football media days as well as our spring sports coverage. Any natural surface, AFS has you covered. You look at their Facebook and Twitter pages, you'll see some of the jobs they've done. There's not really anybody in Arkansas, or very few, who do what they do. And not only that, but they're just exceptional people, great service. This is more of an actual partnership than us. We're not sponsored by Extra Innings Softball. We're actually just kind of partnered with them as far as trying to help them get kids noticed throughout Arkansas. That's really my job with them, is to, if I see a kid that I feel like needs a little bit more exposure at the national level, I talk to a few people, they feel that same way as well, then I'll tell them about it. But they're also wanting to do more written content, more podcast content. So hopefully this will help our players and teams, some of them, be seen on the national level. And then got two more here, of course. Chinook Seedery, you've seen my post. You've seen the post on Natural State Sports. Guys, these are legit seeds. All 8 flavors. I've actually never tried, admittedly, the cinnamon flavor. Not really a cinnamon guy, but if I can recommend either the jalapeno ranch or the hatch chili. Also the smokehouse barbecue. They're the second one from the left on the bottom, is a very underrated flavor as well. So you can go to ChinookSeedery.com, get 10% off of your order by using promo code NSS Media. So go check those out. I know you'll need to get them. Plenty of turf fields that don't allow sunflower seeds, but I know that they will be very handy for you in the spring as well as the summer. And then this one, Kevin, that I am extremely excited about, that we have not mentioned to anybody until now. The sponsor of the Super 7 rankings this year will be Fearless Friday. I know many of you know Fearless Friday through football, some through basketball. They don't do a ton of spring sports coverage, but that could change, and especially it will change now. I actually reached out when I talked to Team Funded about sponsoring Player of the Week. I was thinking about who to reach out to as far as stepping up to the plate, no pun intended, and sponsoring our Super 7. I talked with Lanny Beavers over at Fearless Friday, had a lot of respect for what he and those guys have done for a long time, and they are going to sponsor our Super 7. So it'll be the Fearless Friday Super 7 rankings moving forward. So really excited about that. You can, and again, all this stuff that I've mentioned, we'll have more information as the season goes along and as the days go along, but just wanted to introduce that. So that's it, Kevin, man. It's crazy for me to think that we're here again. I mean, literally, and we talk about it all during football season. It's like it starts in August and then we blink and we're at the second semester. But I know this is kind of, we both do a lot of football stuff. I do a good bit of basketball, but this is kind of our baby. This is spring sports coverage is kind of our baby. I mean, we have a lot of great content. What do you want to call them? Writers, podcasters, just content creators that do so many great things for our athletes and our teams. But as far as statewide stuff, you're just not going to get what you get on here. We're going to, every single week from mid-March on, we're going to go through each of the top headlines for both baseball and softball. As I mentioned, Jared Hawthorne will be joining us for the softball side, but we're just looking forward to getting it. And we got a couple more minutes here. I wanted to say one more thing. I've said this the last few preview episodes, and I just want to go ahead and set the standard. going to say it now, and I'm going to leave, and I'm going to put it to bed after that. We do this because we care about the kids, because we care about the teams, and we have a passion for what we do. We're going to say things that are wrong. I know I probably said one or two wrong things on here just on this episode.
Absolutely.
We're going like it's going to happen. We know that we're going to get flack. That's fine. But the one thing that we want people to understand is we have the best intentions. Plenty of people that are watching me say this already know that. But we're also, that being said, we're going to tell the truth. This is not a place where we're going to sugarcoat. We're not going to not tell things. Now, we're not going to say things harshly or not intend to, but we're going to tell the truth, because the reality is just like in life, sports is not always a bed of roses. Sometimes teams are going to do really well, and we're going to talk about that. And then if a team that's doing really well starts to struggle, we'll talk about that. It's the coach's job to do the critiquing and all that. But at the same time, we're going to tell the truth. And so we just want to make sure that we get that out of the way. I'm going to say this on the softball episode as well, but Kevin has a passion for this. I have a strong passion for this as well. And that's why we do what we do. So I hope that everybody knows, and I can set the standard that we are in this strictly for the kids and the teams, nothing else. And Kevin, I'll let you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And if you are in our rankings, that's huge. That, you're in the top 25%, maybe less. In 6A, it's a little different because there's 16 teams, but there's 32 in 5A. So you're in the top 25%. In 4A and below, that percentage is even lower. So if you're ranked number 2, 3, 4, you're not being slept on. We're not sleeping on you. We just don't think you're the best team right now. So does it prove me wrong by the end of the year? Prove Kyle wrong by the end of the year. You're getting a great recognition by being in a ranking. It's, like Kyle said, we do this because we love the game. We love promoting kids. It's not our job to, say this is right or this is wrong. They're our completely objective opinion on how we see it. But, like I said, we're going to catch flack. We're going to mess up. We're going to be wrong. Please reach out to us. But like I said, we're not doing it. And nothing is ever personal. I can promise you that.
That's right.
Nothing is ever personal when we're sitting behind a mic and on a computer screen talking about the game we love the most. So looking forward to it. Should be a great season of both baseball and softball around the state. Plenty of storylines to begin the season. And just like every year, more will come up throughout the year. And that's where we're excited to tell the story that always ends with the Weekend of Champions in May.
That's right. And that's kind of the story that we tell is the one that that the kids write. That's really what it is the things, the headlines, the top headlines, whether, it's somebody is maybe struggling after an undefeated start or whatever, or a team started off slow and now they're playing really well. That's the kind of stuff that we're going to talk about. But I'll leave with this. Please remember, for ones that will show up in the rankings or the ones that we're talking about the most, pressure is a privilege. So please remember that pressure is, if you're talking, or if we're talking about you and we're writing about you, you have earned that. Not because we just think that we should put you there. You have earned that right. You and your coaches have earned that. Also, too, like Kevin said, don't take anything personal. Take it as motivation. Okay, well, we feel like we're better than that. Now, we don't want your play to be reflective off of what we say. I want to make sure of that. But if it is something that you are offended by or something of that nature, we want you to understand that you write your story. That's really just plain and simple how it is. And so we know many watching this already know Kevin and I very well, know our intentions, know how we do things, but we also know that there are some new ones that are coming along, and we greatly appreciate that. We love to see this grow every single year. So, well, that'll do it. This was episode 56, man, with all I've done 2 a week at times sometimes, so I get them all mixed up. But yeah, episode 50. Yeah, I know. I've been doing the extra inning softball ones and then also the basketball ones, which, man, if you basketball fans, definitely check those out. A lot of great talk. Some of them are actually evergreen conversations as well, because we're just been talking with coaches here in the next week or two as we get our 2 weeks. When we start the state tournaments, we'll have Eric Taylor on again, like we had at the beginning of conference season, talk about the state tournaments and all those previews. But that will do it for episode 56. Really looking forward to another spring sports season. Be sure to subscribe, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, as well as on YouTube if you prefer to watch, and hit that notification bell so you are notified when we release an episode. But other than that, for Kevin Bohannon and all of us here at Natural State Sports, my name's Kyle Sutherland. We will catch you in mid-May for more baseball season coverage. Or I'm sorry, mid-March. Mid-March, the other M word. Take care.